Now, the annual World Economic Forum on Africa drew to a close this past weekend, and with over 10 heads of countries and 1,000 delegates in attendance, issues like poverty, governance and the economy were all discussed. And here to round up some of the key outcomes of the entire forum is Peter Baird, head of the African Private Equity for Investec. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Caleb. Glad to be here.
So, I mean, it's always fantastic to hear that we are taking forward steps in the improvement of our continent, especially from an economic point of view, and this is exactly what was being discussed at the forum. How important do you think it is to have a forum like this in Africa for Africa?
It's incredibly important. I think the effects of it are a little subtle and they take a long time, but to get heads of state, government, business people, nonprofit people, all together in the same room for a few days, focused on nothing but growth, is really important.
Yeah. And I believe that also what was talked about at the forum was the fact that countries like Sudan, Chad and Zimbabwe were referred to as fragile states, if you will. So how do we get these countries out of this and thus improve the continent as a whole? Is there a way of inclusive growth being a solution to this?
Well, first, as everybody says, Africa's not a country, it's a continent.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
54 countries. You can have some laggards and some leading countries. So the countries that are sort of winning on all fronts in terms of good policy, good leadership, clarity, those are really leading the way. And I think the other countries will follow eventually. So the so-called fragile states, I hope that their governments take notice and say, here's what we need to do in order to attract investment, in order to bring people in and to sort of create growth for our people.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there's a lot of campaigns that have been run talking about buying local, supporting local businesses, and I'm sure it's the same in all the other countries as well. And we always trying to put out the African story in the many different ways that we do. How important is that, and what real effect does it actually have on the economy of a country when the people of the country buy local, invest in African products and projects?
Well, it helps a lot. I mean, if the people of a country have a lot of confidence and they keep their money there and they make investments and they buy locally, it's very important. Probably more important, what I think we focused on a lot this past week, was inter-regional trade. Just that within Africa, there's very little trade between countries. And instead, by making borders easier to work with, by making movement of people easier, movement of capital, then I think you'll see that's really the key to unlocking quite a lot of growth. I think that'll have a significantly bigger impact. And you think for the smaller countries, they're small markets. They don't have much they can do locally. But if they work as a region, if we work as a continent, then the sky's the limit.
Yeah, the United States of Africa might be a thing of the future.
Exactly.
I mean, you being the head of African Private Equity at Investec, where do you see Africa going? Give us the next 10 years of your economic picture.
Okay. Of course, I'm talking my book. But no, I think we're at a great point in the cycle where you've had currencies. So keep in mind, a year ago, we honestly thought the world was coming to an end. Everything. We would go to the office and feel like you're getting kicked in the face all day. But currencies have blown out, and now they're a bit overshot, and things are inexpensive. It's easy to export. Everybody's all coming off a cyclical low. Commodity prices have come back. So it really feels as though there's a lot of positive momentum. And again, it depends a little bit by country. But you know, the handful of countries that are leading the way are really doing well. And I think the next 5 years, it's hard to project 10, the next 5 years will be very good for investors in Africa.
Yeah, well, we look forward to a positive future in the African economy. And thank you very much for joining us this morning.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Mr. Peter Baird, head of the African Private Equity at Investec. Thanks so much for stopping by and giving us some insight on the 2017 World Economic